Hello, everyone. This is Dr. B from Steps to the Future coming to you with another live stream um, where we're going to hear from a young man about his career journey. One of the things I do want to say to students is you really need to think about your pathways after high school. Is it going to be a 4 year college? Is it going to be a 2 year college? Maybe you've decided that you need to work for a while before you make a decision about attending a college. Maybe it's an apprenticeship. Maybe you're just going to go and get a certificate to see if that's a field that you really like. So, tonight we're going to hear from a guest who is going to be able to give us some insight into his journey, how he got there, and where he is today, along with some other information that I think will be really useful to you. I am thrilled that I have this guest with me this evening as a high school teacher, middle and high school teacher in East Providence, Rhode Island. I am always so thrilled when I have the opportunity to have a conversation with a former student. It's probably one of the most priceless um, things that can happen to a teacher is to be able to stay in contact with their former students, to see them move on in life, to see them adulting, to see them becoming parents, to see them out there in the professional world. So for me, this is a personal joy. This is something that really um, brings a smile to my face. We're going to be back in about 9 seconds, and when we come back, you will have the opportunity to hear from Jeffrey Wright, and I'll give you a brief introduction when we come back. And here we are on screen. So, folks, let me give you a little brief bio from Jeffrey. So, this is Jeffrey Wright. He is a graduate of the Community College of Rhode Island with an associate's degree. Go on, CCRI. That's my home state there. He has a BA in history from Ashford University, and I am so shocked because I did not know your major was history. I was a history major, so I love that. And he has a master's in education in urban education from Providence College. So there's another connection there because I currently teach at Providence College in their counselor education program. I teach the career information class online to people who are studying to become school counselors. So let me give you a little bit more information about Jeffrey. Jeffrey's a husband and proud father of his two children. You're going to hear more about these two young people because when he says he's a proud father, he is a proud father. He loves his family deeply. Jeffrey is a passionate educator and community advocate who has worked with children in various settings for over 20 years. Jeffrey serves as an assistant principal within the Providence Public School District. He is an active member of the NAACP Providence branch. He is excited about educating, impacting, and empowering our youth to make a meaningful difference in our world. When he is not engaged in community work, Jeff loves to root for his eclectic taste of sports teams: the San Francisco 49ers, Denver Nuggets, Boston Red Sox, yay Sox, and the Friars men and women's basketball teams. Jeffrey, welcome, welcome, welcome to C3 with Dr. B. I am so honored to have you here. As I said earlier, being able to still engage with my former students and see the difference that they're making in the world is music to a teacher's heart. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. Greatly appreciated. You were just, I was so excited when I signed up for your class. I remember, I remember as plain as day. I was so excited. I was like, yes, yes. I have Miss Wilkins at the time, Miss Wilkinson, not Dr. Wilkinson, and I was just like, that's awesome. And then I knew that transition, but I was so, oh my gosh, yeah, you are, you've to
Oh,
me, you're a pillar, a giant in education, and just I'm humbled and honored to be here with you this evening. So thank you for having me.
oh, you are so welcome. And folks, I didn't pay him to say that, just so you know. So folks, people that are out there joining in, listening, please make sure you join the conversation by putting your comments in the chat section so we can bring you into the room also. So, Jeffrey, tell us a little bit about your journey from high school on to post-secondary education. I think it's always important for young people to hear this because everyone thinks that it's this linear path. And for many of us, it just isn't. That's just the way life is. So tell us a little bit about your journey from high school to college, or even before that. What kind of a student were you in high school?
Wow. Well, I will say, I will say that I was a student where things came easy to me. I felt like it was just, I loved it. I love history, very much so, and so it was just, as in school was easy. I did love high school so much that I attended for 5 years, so not four. But that was, but that was because I also, again, I didn't learn how to be I don't know how to be a student, and so I was able to get through high school the last well, my last 4 years. I ended up graduating from East Providence in '99, and I was still able to get into a 4 year college. And so for me, it was just growing up, and it was just always instilled in me that I can do this thing. I can go to college, and that's what I did. I went to right out of high school. I attended a college in Oklahoma. It was Oral Roberts actually, and but and I love being out there. I loved socializing, but there was also a component, right? Like there's a reason why you attend college, and that is to that's to work towards attending and obtain a degree. And originally, actually, was a theology major. I was just like I was very much very much was influenced by by different different individuals in the church setting, and I was just like, I just want to help people. And but whilst taking theology classes, oh my God, they were so hard. But I just didn't. I just at the time, it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do, and it wasn't until my third year in college that I realized that I love working with kids. I love kids. I can work with kids. I can help people, and I can do it this way. And but by the time I figured it out, again, I didn't learn how to be. I still hadn't yet learned how to be a student, where it's studying, where prioritizing your studying, and just making sure you stay on top of your work, and actually put in the work in. And so I ended up returning back to Rhode Island, and I returned back to Rhode Island. I worked, I ended up working at a local YMCA. Again, just having a chance to work with kids. I attended some classes at Rhode Island College for a bit, but I still had to pay back the loans that I had previously. And so that was hard, just to try to juggle both. I ended up at CCRI. And I remember working with a student at my YMCA program, and I remember saying to them, I said, hey, you really need to do your homework. It's important. So one day you go to school, and then you go to college, and you graduate from college. And the student looked at me, and the student said, did you graduate from college? And I said, you know what? I did not. I had not. But I said to them, I said, I'll go back. I said, you handle this business, you handle your business here, and I'll go back to school, and I'll go back to college. And that's exactly what I did. And I went back to CCRI, and CCRI really was I felt like it was that last opportunity for me to really figure out, really really settle in. And it gave me exactly what I needed. It gave me the space to figure out, to figure me out. And I'm so appreciative of it, because I think the stigma that I had previously about attending a community college, it was just like, oh, I don't want to go to community college. That's not what you do. You go to a 4 year college. I was thinking about, at the time, I was thinking about A Different World, and Dwayne Wayne and all those all those characters. So I was just like, well, I need to, this is where I should be at. But looking back on that journey, if I could do it all over again, I probably would have attended community college first. Now, and again, for me, it was what I needed. I needed to be in a space where I can kind of, where I can settle in, and CCRI gave me that opportunity. And so having that associate's degree, it was powerful, right? Like being able to walk across that stage after, I think at the time I walked 10 years after I graduated with my, from high school. I actually finished in 2008, but I remember walking across the stage, and it felt liberating. It was just like, man, okay, this is okay. This feels really good. I like this, right? So I want to go back and try it. I want to go back and continue my journey. And so I would chip away. I was chipping away at some classes through Rhode Island College. But again, it was just, fiscally, it wasn't flowing. But I still continued working with kids. I had at the time was a YMCA, and I substitute taught in Massachusetts, because in Massachusetts you could sub with at least 60 college credits or equivalent of an associate's degree. So I continued there, and then I also did some work at I still did some work at Bradley Hospital, which was impactful, life changing. Learned so much more about communicating with I think with a diverse group of students, and that's something to this day that I still take with me, and I'll touch on later on. And then along the way, made some relationships and some friendships, and then I was encouraged in 2013 to apply to a school. They needed, they were going to begin a behavioral class, and I said, you know what, yeah, I love what the school stands for. I love the mission and vision to prepare every student for college and the world beyond. This is at Blackstone Valley Prep charter school, and I was just like, man, I love it. And so I took it. I went in there and just started working. And I love the fact that it was just like, hey, you're preparing children for something in this future, and education is really important. And through that experience, it was also like, you know what, I need a, I had some encouragement from people within that, within that school setting that were just like, hey, Jeff, you got some skills over here. You should really consider going back for your bachelor's degree. And at that point, I said, you know what, yes. So I went back, obtained my bachelor's degree. It took me a couple of years, chipping away online. Finished it, and after I finished the bachelor's degree, had an opportunity within BVP to, to go from the elementary school to a high school setting, and work through the high school setting, and had a lot of conversations with with different leaders, different individuals who really gave me some good feedback, and from there I pursued my master's at Providence College. Went through the urban teaching program, and from there it provided an opportunity for me to I ended up being encouraged and supported to go through CLEA's program with the Principal Residency Network, where it provided me an opportunity to obtain my my admin cert, which also through that piece, which I didn't include, I also have had the opportunity to going through Johnson Wales and their program as well. So it's been a journey, right? So this been definitely been a journey, but I've learned so much through that time. So my school experience, I would say is non-traditional, and that it's just it's just like it wasn't linear. It was a lot of peaks and valleys. I would say highs and lows, right? Like you learn, as much as we get excited about the things that we win, right? The things that we're like, oh yeah, I did really well here. There's also those moments where, where you fail, right? There's those moments like, kind of like my Nuggets did last night, which I'm not still not crying about. But you learn from that, right? You learn from those things. When you were learning to ride a bike, do you reflect on, I often say to students, like, you don't necessarily reflect on, all the great moments when you just riding the bike, right? You're quick to remember the times when you fell and you scraped your knees, and you look at those marks and you're like, oh yeah, I remember when I scraped my knee. Look at this mark that I have on my elbow. So you learn a lot from, I've learned a lot from those experiences, and it's helped me so much along the way to get to where I am now. So I know I chatted a lot, but
Wow.
yeah,
That you gave us a lot of food for thought, Jeffrey. So I really
yeah,
appreciate that. So just unpacking it a little bit, when you talked about starting at a 4 year school first, and it just wasn't working out for you, and then eventually going to the Community College of Rhode Island. Um, I remember back in the day when I was in college, that's when CCRI was called the Rhode Island Junior College. And I'll never forget one evening we were in one of the dorms at Rhode Island College. There were a group of us talking, and one of my friends' cousin had come into the room, and he was actually a student at Rhode Island Junior College. And one of the things I remember is somebody saying, "Oh, you go to Reject." because that was the nickname for the junior college. That's what that
Right.
was the acronym. And people really were giving him a hard time because he was starting at a community college. And I remember saying, he's taking the same classes we're taking. Like, what is the problem here? So I think it's so important that students understand that community college is definitely a viable pathway for anyone to start. It costs less. It gives you an opportunity to figure out what pathway you want to take. There's myriad reasons for why going to a community college first is really good for students. I like that you talked about, that your path wasn't linear. It wasn't. And I think a lot of times young folks think, okay, if you do A, then B happens, then C happens. And they don't understand that, no, there are a lot of, like you said, peaks and valleys. There are times when uh, you just don't feel like you're going to get through it. But from what I'm heard from you, you always made sure that you were having experiences that you were going to be able to use for whatever your future was going to be. You always seemed to have that connection with working with young people. So every one of your experiences transferred, that gave you transferable skills so that I'm sure you use most of those in your position as an assistant principal.
No, 1000%. I would say that I knew, so I knew that I always wanted to. It was the goal was it was always with kids, right? And I never deviated, never changed from that. But I would say that I just, along the way that those transferable skills, and I think one of the biggest skills are just communication, right? Like being able to learn how to communicate and not just, and then what I had alluded to earlier from my time at Bradley Hospital, I learned how to communicate non-verbally, right? Like I had it, like I had there were patients that I was working with initially, and they were non-verbal, right? And so here's this guy, with much shorter hair, and just I just love the chat, right? I was just like da 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 da, da, right? And but I had to learn how to find a way to connect with the kids that I was working with, who didn't they communicated, they just didn't communicate with the way in which I was used to communicating,
Mm-hmm.
right? So and so I want to be clear, like they were communicating, right? It just I had to figure out how to find that connection to communicate with appropriately with them, and it was an experience that really shifted my thought process,
Mm-hmm.
and just how I communicate now is 93% of communication is nonverbal, really, right? Like so you want to make that 7% count, which is I say that to students very often, like that 7%, right? You want to make it count, but that 93%, it's your tone, right? And it's your body language. You're communicating more to me without saying words than when you're speaking. And so that's the part that I've learned, through that piece, and also just relationships, right? Like I can't emphasize enough just being able to ask questions, right? It's scary, right? Like I remember my dad saying a long time ago. I used to think this was corny, but he's speaking facts. I'm not trying to hate on him, but he's speaking facts. But he's like, you have not because you ask not. And oftentimes, like I would say to anybody out there, like ask questions, right? Like I've learned so much more because I've just asked questions, and just being able to pick the brains of people over the years, just from their experiences has really enhanced my experience, and it's helped me now in this, in my current position now. There's this one person I can think of is actually a parent of one of your former students, Robin Morris. This is
Okay.
Sean's mom, and
Mm-hmm.
I like will say that I had the privilege of working with her, and man, she just the way she never settled, right? So like that was something that I learned. Like I learned to not wait on somebody else to give me the information that I'm looking for, right? Like take the time, ask the questions, but do your research. And so in that time, I didn't realize as much, like when I was going through it initially, I didn't realize that it was actually teaching me how to be a better, not only how to be a better professional, but how to be, how to also be a better student too. So like, I like to this day, that's probably to me, she's probably one of the biggest, has had one of the biggest influences on my life. Definitely from a professional perspective, personally too, but definitely from a professional perspective. Like that's just one example of a person that I can say proudly, like, man, I wouldn't be, I don't know if if it weren't for her, I don't know if I would be where I am. And she's one of several people that I can say that has been just instrumental.
So, two things here. For people who aren't from Rhode Island, could you tell them what Bradley Hospital is?
Absolutely. So Bradley Hospital actually has a distinction of being the first children's psychiatric hospital in the United States, which I believe it came to be in the late, I think it was the 1890s, I believe, unless I think that's what it was, but
I
someone
think
can
it's,
quote me
yeah.
on that. I think, I don't know, 1897 is a number that pops into my brain for some reason. Someone can Google that and fact check me, but I'm not sitting here saying that I'm absolutely correct. I could be wrong. But that's what Bradley Hospital, that is Bradley Hospital. And so they have, so they had different units. They had units for, um, I think the Center for Developmental Children with Developmental Disabilities, they had a unit for children who I think over the last couple of years they had one where it had a specific unit that helps to support children and families with children who had OCD. So there's a lot of different, partial programs. They have full inpatient programs, and and shout out to all the individuals who are working over at Bradley Hospital. Those that I've worked with in the past, those who are working in the present, those who will be there in the future. I mean, y'all work extremely hard and support. And support a population of children in the state throughout the state of Rhode Island that they need a lot of love, and it's not easy. It's not easy on the families. It's not easy for the children. It's not often not easy in the school districts either. So shout out to all the individuals who are working over there. Great work that y'all do.
That's true. So, for folks that are just joining in or that are watching this on the replay, we are with Jeffrey Wright, who is an assistant principal in the Providence Public Schools, which is in Rhode Island, my home state. Um, I actually had quite a few educational sessions that I attended on my own over at Bradley because I was really trying to learn a lot about ADHD, and it was still underdiagnosed then back in the day. But I remember Bradley had a series of workshops for teachers if they chose to pay for it and go because you know I don't know about how much now, but back in the day, schools weren't paying for your professional development outside of the school, so it had to come out of your own pocket. But I was interested in learning more about ADHD because I was seeing more of it in schools, and it wasn't part of our curriculum. It wasn't something that I learned in my teaching program. It wasn't something that I learned a lot about in my school counseling program. So I definitely wanted to make sure I got back and learned some more. So I'm very familiar with Bradley. Another thing that you talked about that I think is so crucial when you were talking about Miss Morris and you're talking about what she's meant to you, the whole idea of mentorship, having a professional mentor. Um, you eloquently talked about how she has helped you, the types of skills that you have become more confident about in following her lead and just giving you the confidence that you needed to move forward. So I love that you talked about that because we're always trying to encourage young folks to get a mentor, to find someone who they can talk to, someone that they can learn from, someone that they're comfortable asking those questions. Because sometimes you're like, is that a stupid question? I don't know if I want to ask that and have people look at me like side eye. But having
Yeah.
someone that you can talk to and knowing that they're going to be there for whatever questions you have is truly a blessing.
Yeah, no, I will 1,000% will tell you. And oftentimes I feel like too, people will say like when people think mentor, they think like, okay, I need a master Yoda in my life, right? And it's not necessarily a master Yoda, right? A mentor could be, it could be one of your friends, right? It
Mm-hmm.
could be, it could be a friend that you have, and you're just like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna pick your brain about I'm gonna reach out and pick your brain about A, B, and
Mm-hmm.
C because you're the expert in this field or in this situation in this, here, and I could use that support. And so like oftentimes like I've been blessed to make, I can think of like tons of people who I consider as mentors, who've been so helpful. Like, they're just little things that they've said that I just, that resonates with me, and it's resonated with me over the years, and it's helped me. I remember a conversation with another friend, powerful educator Jonathan Santos Silva, and I remember a conversation I had with him long time ago, and I was at this point where I was figuring out I'm still like, I was like, oh, what is my next step going to be, right? Like, and so I'm just like, I'm just going to reach out to people who've gone through this process. I want to pick
Mhm.
their brain. And I remember he had asked me, he said, do you want to be, if you're interested in school administration, do you want to be a school administrator where you work at, do you see yourself being a school administrator anywhere?
Mm.
And at the time, I couldn't answer that question. And so that was something where I was like, huh. Right. And I had to sit on that one for a while. And I was like, man, I was like, man, like, why did he have to ask that question, man? Like, I'm never talking to that brother again. I'm playing. No, but it was what I needed to hear. And so I would say to students, I would say to people that are out there, when you're, when you're looking for that person, they say iron sharpens iron, right? So when you're looking for that person, and you might already have that person in your corner, right? Like, I
Mhm.
would encourage you to find a person who isn't going to just tell you what you want to hear. They're going to tell you what you need to hear. And sometimes what you need to hear is not going to feel good. It's not going to sound good. It's not going to give you the warm fuzzies, right? It's going to make you,
Exactly.
it's going to make you, you're going to get in your feelings, right? You're going to get in some kind of
Mhm.
way, and you're going to be like, you might give them a little side eye, right? And I think I might have given my wife a little side eye, the other day. She said something to me, and I was like, but in reality, it was what I needed to hear. She was like,
Right.
I told her after, I said, baby, you're right. Like, it was what I needed to hear. I may not have wanted to hear that, but I appreciate the fact that, she can keep it real and let me know. And so that's what I would say to anyone, like, those mentors or those people are not, it might be a peer, right? It might be a friend.
Right.
It might be a friend that you see that is going somewhere where you're at. It might even be somebody that you didn't even think that you would ever connect with. But I would say it's better to ask a question to somebody than not, because you never know what door it could open from just being able to reach out and just
Exactly.
saying, hey, I have a question. And that can change. And I've said this to students, even currently at the Community College of Rhode Island. I've spoken with students, and I've encouraged them and said, hey, look,
Mhm.
it's okay. You should ask questions. Like I said, here's my information, right? Reach out to me, but like,
Right.
ask the questions, because you never know what opportunity could be there. And I'm not saying you ask questions because you're looking for something, right? But you
Right.
never know what opportunity is there if you don't take the time to make that one step. And that step could be the difference between it could be the difference between something monumental, right?
Mhm.
You never know what's going to come out of that. Kind of like my Nuggets last night. If they just hit a couple more shots, who knows? Who knows what could have happened? I digress. I'm mourning. I'm mourning the loss
The
of
loss.
a great team, but it's okay. I'm joking over.
But that's so true what you're saying, Jeffrey, about mentors come in all shapes and sizes. They come into your life at all different seasons. They may only be there for a moment, they may be there for years. I remember when I was contemplating for a number of years, I said I was going to go back and get a doctorate. So then it was like, oh, I'm going to do it by the time I'm 35. Then it was like 40, 45, 50. And I remember at one point an opportunity came up to go to Johnson and Wales for their educational leadership program. And I remember thinking, I think I'm too old to do that. I'm gonna have to give up on that dream. And one of my friends and mentors said something I needed to hear. She said, "So in 3 years, you can be 3 years older with or without the degree. So you decide. You decide." And I said, "Huh? I never really thought of it that way." So I said, "Well, let me jump in with both feet and get it done." Was it easy? There were days where I'm like, what in the world am I doing? But I am so glad I took the experience. I had one of my earliest mentors actually was my seventh grade school counselor. Oops, we have lost Jeffrey for a minute, but he is back. Here we go. Okay. Yep. That's technology. Sometimes it does that to us. But I was saying one of my early mentors was actually my seventh grade school counselor. And I remember, middle school, you know how middle school kids are. You're trying to get along with your peers and you want all your friends to like you. So I was doing some behaviors that if my mother had to come up to the school, I would be in a lot of trouble. And I remember my counselor, Mr. John Gilfillan, I mean, God rest his soul, he said to me, he called me into his office one day and he just said, "You're better than that. I see a different future for you. Um, you don't need that friendship. So continue on." And he stayed a mentor in my life right up until I got my master's in school counseling. So from seventh grade through graduating from high school, graduating with a bachelor's degree, and going through a master's program, he stayed a really important mentor in my life. I see we've got some people joining us. Please make sure you have a comment. You want to join in the conversation, let us know. We have with us Jeffrey Wright Jr. here. He is an assistant principal in Providence Public Schools, and he's given us some wonderful insights about navigating the road to leadership and what that looks like. It's so important for young folks to understand that leadership doesn't happen in a vacuum. Getting from one point to another point does not have happen in a vacuum, and it doesn't always look pretty. But perseverance, resilience, just sticking with it makes a difference. So Jeffrey, so tell me a little bit about your role in your school currently as an assistant principal.
Yeah, no, I mean that is a great question. It's just it's like a jack of all trades, a master of none, right? And so it's oftentimes I would say this oftentimes I look at it as, and I think about like my quote, the quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is life's most important and pertinent question is what are we doing for others? And so as a leader, as a school leader, I look that's what I look at. Like what am I doing? What am I doing for others? And so in that role, in that role, sometimes it's, sometimes it's it's the traditional, like, all right, I need to, I have to I have to look at academic data, and we have to be able to see what we're, see if we're checking these boxes and making sure we're doing what we're supposed to do according to what the district wants us to do, which aligns with the state. So you have those pieces, but bigger than that, it's just really just making sure that the school community has what they need, right? Like if our and I'll say like our if our teachers have what they need, if they feel supported, then we're going to get the best versions of them in the classroom, and the biggest beneficiary of that are our kids. And if our students have what they need, right? If they come into the space and they know they feel welcome, and they know they feel, they know that there's love there, right? They're gonna come in, and they're gonna be willing to be vulnerable enough to take risk, take risk in their learning, to in order for them to grow. If our families feel like they're welcome partners in the school, and at the school, right, they're gonna they're gonna be more, they're gonna want to engage more, because they recognize, because they're gonna know and feel that their voices aren't just, their voices are heard, right? And they're partners that we welcome to the table. And it's when I look at school, it's like the ecosystem that we all play a part, right? And so so my role is just to make sure, the way I see it, I would say my role is just to make sure that everybody has what they need in order to be the best version of themselves. That's
Yeah.
it. It's just more serving. I think leadership is more, it's more about serving than anything else. It's not all,
Yes.
oh, I'm in this role, so I have to do this. No, it's you have to be in a place where you're willing to do things that you might not be comfortable doing, right? But you're putting, it's not the it's more about everybody else. It's not about, it's not about you, right? It's about everybody else. And finding that balance, and sometimes there's things that in a role that have to do, right? And
Hmm.
it's not
Yeah.
necessarily what you want to do, but I would say, like, on a day to day, for example, it's having the opportunity to pop into a classroom and just sit and being able to observe, and not go into a classroom to say, oh, I did an observation on the teacher. No,
Right.
and actually just go into a classroom and just to sit down and see what, and watch children learning in real time, and being able to go back later and say to that teacher, hey, I just want to say, man, that lesson, that lesson the science lesson you did on the room temperature, that was awesome, right? And I saw how students were engaged and how they were asking questions. That was amazing. How did you do that? What led you to get to that point? And to be able to like just genuinely tell somebody, man, you're doing an awesome job, right? Or just being able to catch a student, right, who may have had a tough time, right, a tough moment, and I had to address them for a challenging moment, but to come back and say, man, I just want to say how proud I am of you because I see that you have been able. I saw this moment here, but I see what you're doing now, and look at what you're doing, and look at how much you've grown. And in order to be able to call a parent and just tell a parent, hey, this is Mr. Wright. I haven't spoken to you in a little while. I just want to tell you that I watched your child. Your child did this amazing thing today where they helped a friend. They helped a friend that was having a really hard time. And to be able to have those moments and being able to see and being able to provide that space for a family, right? A family who may be used to hearing a lot of where it's always negative, right? To be able to
Exactly.
provide something positive,
Right.
it helps to create an environment that becomes more welcoming. And if the environment is more welcoming, the beneficiary are the kids, right? the
Yeah.
kids the kids are the ones that will get
Yes.
what they need, regardless of what I can't believe I'm saying, but like I would say, regardless of what like a test says, right? The kids
Right.
will get what they need because every child's needs looks and feels differently.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here wishing there were emojis that I could like put on here because
Yeah,
listening to you talk, you are the kind of administrator that I think every classroom teacher wish they had, for several reasons. Not only are you coming into the classroom out of curiosity, out of what can I do to help, or just looking at the joy in students learning. I mean, so many times sometimes I'm talking to friends who are still currently teachers and they feel like an administrator is coming in their room to catch them doing something they shouldn't be doing rather
yeah,
than there as a support. So I love that. Earlier you talked about making parents feel like they're part of the community, like they're part of the process. I think for the longest time, that's been one of the barriers to helping all students succeed because I know there are a lot of parents out there who feel that their concerns don't matter to the school, or because of life circumstances, they can't come to PTA meetings, they can't come to open houses, but they care just as much about what's happening to their children. And unfortunately, sometimes people take that um, non-attendance at these meetings as somebody who doesn't care. And I remember one time when as a counselor, people were talking about, well, we get the parents into open house that we don't need to see. And I said, well, have you ever thought about, are we doing this at a time that's good for the parents? These people are just getting out of work. They've got kids at home. They've got to get dinner on the table. But yet we want them to drop all of that and come here. Did we provide them with a meal? Did we provide them with some kind of daycare to make it easier for them to come here? Like, what are we doing? And it's like, oh, if they really wanted to come. So you always saw that part where somebody's privilege was showing up, because they couldn't see the other side of it. So hearing you talk about making parents part of the community, making them feel like what they have to say matters, is really heartwarming because without parents and the school and the teachers all having conversations, the one who loses are the children. They're the ones who lose. And as you said, when all of those pieces are working, they're definitely the beneficiaries of it. So I love what you just said about that. It almost makes me want to go back to school and be in the classroom, but I won't go
no,
that far.
no. Well, there are two things that I'd like to say on that. The one thing I want to say that I didn't say previously is that in being in that space with teachers, I also think they're experts, right? And so I also think it's important to be able to recognize recognize when it's something that you may not know, right? You may not, it's okay to say, you know what, I don't have the understanding of this the way you have the understanding of this, but being able to recognize, recognize teachers as experts because they are experts. And so I think as a building leader, just also just being able to say, look, you know what, you have a, you understand this better than I do. Let me hear what your perspective is and bring and welcome and invite in that space in. So that's one piece that I want to highlight, because that's really important. I think it's not, just because the title says, just because whatever, just because the title says, oh, this is what you are, assistant principal. I'm still learning too, right? Like I'm not a person where I'm like, oh, I know it, like I got it all together. No, I don't. I'm learning. There are things that there are things that I have. I think I'm pretty good at. I'll say that I'm all right. I'm pretty good at it. But there's other areas where I'm just like, man, I constantly need to learn and grow here. And if I'm not willing to be vulnerable enough to recognize that I don't have that understanding, or I mean, I'm growing in that understanding, right? Then what kind of leader am I, right? Like what good is that? What good is that to the team? And then I think the other piece of what you were saying too, with the families and having the families involved. I remember a conversation I had with a good friend of mine, Giovanni Brandon, where he said it's so simple, right? What is the incentive for parents to want to come to schools? And so like I thought about that and I'm like, oh man, wait a minute, what is the incentive? That's right. Like, and I'm doing research on my own, and in terms of with family engagement through my own program. And so that was a piece that I'm like, and that's where I'm going with my study, like family engagement. So so that's I need a few more years on that, but we'll get there. But like I would say the family, like I would say like I saw at my school, we were fortunate enough to restart to re-enter the Providence Elementary Basketball League. And so I noticed that there were families that we were not always able to get, we weren't able to get them to attend other school functions, but they were there at those games and they were there cheering on their kids. And I sat back and I'm just like, you know what? That's what the incentive is, the children, right? So like if we make sure that, like, because a sporting event is child centered, right? It's a child centered activity, right? So like if we can, if we can be a little more creative about how we, with some of the events that we have at schools, and make it child centered, probably more likely to get families that want to come, or they'll do what they can to attend. Granted, there's other things that will come up. I definitely know the stress of picking up babies and trying to trying to make sure dinner's ready, and all of those avenues. And sometimes it is like, what in the world? How are we doing this right now? I don't even know. So it's a bit when things run into mind. But I just wanted to I just wanted to be able to say those two things, because I think it's really important to name it, claim it, and and just recognize those things separately.
Yeah. So, as a young dad, tell us a little bit about your kids.
Man, oh my gosh, my babies, man, I love my babies. My daughter is 5 years old. She turned 5 2 weeks ago tomorrow, and she is, man, she's the joy, man. She's a sponge. Wants to, she wants to constantly looking for ways to learn. She also is, will definitely let you know what she's feeling in the moment. So I think that's the combination of mom and dad. I'll probably give my wife a little more credit on that one. But she's awesome, man. I mean, I just love. I'm thankful that they want to be around me, that they want to be around me, and it's not. It's I try to say it without getting all teary eyed about it, but I just love being a dad. I love being with them, man. I love spending time with my kids. Even when it's bedtime, and of course, bedtime's the time when my 5-year-old has a million and one questions that she wants to ask, and so yeah, so a lot of our conversations have been around nocturnal and diurnal animals, which at
Oh,
the time we began this discussion, she was 4, and she started asking about nocturnal animals, and I'm like, what in the world, how in the world are you asking about nocturnal animals? And then I was like, okay, I know nocturnal, but what are day animals called? And I learned that they were diurnal animals, and we learned a whole bunch of things with that. And we still have conversations, which are great, and we also are able to like have conversations about, oftentimes we learn, she's learned what's a question versus what's a statement, right? And so it's like,
mhm.
Daddy, I have a question. Well, it's like, then she looks at me, she's like, well, it's more of a statement. Okay, great. So like even taking these little moments and turning them into like, having her get to the place where she understands or recognizes what a question is versus what a statement is, and here are things that you should consider when you're asking questions. My 2 year old, man, oh man, he's fearless, man. He loves jumping off of anything, and he jumps off with this confidence that I'm going to catch him every single time. And it's just like, boy, like I don't like, I don't want you to hurt yourself, but man, like, come on, man, he's coming out here, he's like, and I'm like, whoa, I gotta catch this kid, because if he hurts himself, then my wife's like, what are you doing? But I would say that with my kids, they help me stay grounded. Like I just, I'm fortunate enough to be in a position where, now where people are like, hey Jeff, can you do, are you able to give some time to do this? Are you able to give some time to do that? And on one hand, I want to say yes, right? But on the other hand, it's also, I'm learning how to say, you know what, I can't commit to this because, as a dad of two young kids, man, like, I only get that time once, and so I want to make the most of the time that I have with them now, while I can, because we're gonna have memories of doing, like, of like, I remember the day that we built a tent in the living room, right? Like we took a bunch of blankets and chairs and we built a tent, and we were reading and we were singing the Troll soundtrack for like the millionth time. So these are things that it fills my cup, just because I just something about just being a dad, but like with them, it's even made me a better educator. It's made me better in terms of, and I was worried about that. I was worried about how I would react, or how I was going to be I'm actually an elementary school assistant principal, and I was worried about that with having young kids. But in reality, it's enhanced me so much to be able to say, okay, I can, how am I going to, like, this? If my children are thinking this way, what are the kids in my building? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? Right. And being able to take that, granted, there's an age gap there, but just thinking from that perspective, it's helped me out. And it's also helped me to engage, like, to connect better with our families who also have, who are coming in, and their kids are going to school for the first time. And there's this level of anxiety and this level of
Yes.
like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I don't know how to, like, I feel like with the kids, you start stressing so much because you want everything to be perfect. And then it's just like, wait a minute, once you get past all of what the anxiety, like what's going on with a parent, you realize, like, okay, you're feeling anxiety about A, B, and C, but it's like, oh, okay, well, I feel that too. So I get it. Like, I get where you're coming from. Let's take a deep breath. It's okay. We're going to figure this thing out. And so, yeah, so I would say, like, with the babies, man, I can go on and on about them for days, man. They just, I found out my daughter took selfies of me the other day, when I was snoring on the couch with my son, and she somehow took some selfies. So that was, so I had to, like, have a little moment with her, like, hey baby girl, I don't need you over here taking doing selfies. Like, let's not do that.
Right.
But it was, yeah, anyway, yeah, those are the kids, man. They are, like I said, 2 and 5. And I just want to cherish every single moment with them for as long as I can. They're awesome.
Wow.
So sorry,
Wow.
I talked so much about
No,
them, but
no, 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 no,
yeah.
no. I absolutely love the look on your face when you're talking about your kids. I love how you're able to relate what other parents are feeling to what you've gone through, because I think that's so important for people to be able to have those connections. And other parents probably feel that from you, and that you take all of that and pour it into your work as an educator. I know one of the things that was always important to me was I wanted to treat other people's kids the way I wanted teachers to treat my kids. So if I felt that I wasn't being 100%, then I needed to look at myself and figure out what it was that I needed to do differently, because it really is about the students. It's about making it work for them. And sometimes schools can be very adult centered, and they need to all be student centered. So I absolutely love hearing you talk about that, especially as a black man who's an assistant principal at an elementary school. our young kids don't have enough role models that may look like them in the classroom. I had a conversation several years ago with Richard Martin, who was the history teacher at East Providence High School. So Mr. Martin and I are still, we're still in communication, and we talked about the first time that either one of us or audience members had a black teacher in the classroom or a black, administrator. And I didn't have my first black teacher until I was in seventh grade. And I forgot what, how old he was. But we talked about, so did you have a black professor, and what have you?
Right.
For the longest time at East Providence High School, I was, you could count the number of teachers of color on one hand. You know,
Yeah.
it was me, Mr. Font, um, eventually Mr. Martin, Mr. Montero, Mr. Cavallo. So there was a handful of us there in a faculty, that was pretty large. At one point, East Providence High School had the largest school population in the state. I remember when we had almost 3,000 students, and we were on double sessions. But there weren't that many of us there. So I love seeing this because students oftentimes are trying to think about what they want to do with their lives. And if they don't see people that look like them, they may not know that this is a possibility for them. Going into education, you can move beyond the classroom if that's what you choose to do. So I love that, you're an assistant principal at an elementary school, catching them young, catching them while they're still sponges and moldable and are willing to make those mistakes and listen because elementary school kids can be pretty honest.
Yes, yeah, they were quick to tell you that anytime that you mess up or anytime that you
Yeah.
say something, they are quick to let you know, hey, Mr. Wright, you said this.
Yes.
What's going on? And so I remember I had a student this afternoon. He found me first thing this morning saying, Mr. Wright, did you, there was this thing that you said that you were going to help me with.
Hmm.
Did you help me with that? And I said, I'll get to you. I said, look, I said, I didn't forget. I'll get to you by the end of the day. And I'm doing dismissal, and at this point, it's a little after 4 o'clock. As the students' bus was the last bus, but I made sure that I made sure I had this little, there was this little figure that there was a little figure that he had misplaced, and I said, I'll help you find it. So I found it,
Hmm.
so I had it in my pocket. I just didn't want to give it. I didn't want to give it to him during the school day, so then he's distracted. And the teacher's like, "Hey, wait a minute, what, Mr. Wright? What are you doing here?"
Right.
But I made sure, right? I made sure as he was, and he would happen to be the last student strolling out of the building, going right to the bus, and he had this look in his eye, and I said, "Hey, I got you," and he was just like, "Oh my God, thank you so much. You remembered?" And I
Yeah,
was like, "Yes, I did remember." So, kids don't forget, man. Kids' memory,
they don't.
I would say selective memory at times because they forget the things that they shouldn't forget, right? When it's when the rubber meets the road, but then other times it's like they remember the other stuff. But yeah, no, it's this is no, it's but absolutely what you said though in terms of just being in a position as a as a black male being in elementary school, and I find the impact, and I've been in an assistant principal also in Central Falls at one of their elementary schools as well, and I find the impact regardless of like definitely I definitely see it with kids of different subgroups, but I would say that the response from children it's pretty even across the board.
Yes.
It's a very positive, it's a very positive interaction, very positive feedback, and so I've seen the impact on kids of all backgrounds, and they feel more like it's just more like we get into conversations about sneakers, right? So I try to sometimes I wear a pair of Jordans. I have different colors and match the blazer. So today I think I had my maroon and gray Jordans on today. But like I'm able to strike up conversations
Right.
with students
Hmm.
about that. And then when I see them outside of school, I've seen them a few times at my daughter's gymnastics class, and so we're able to strike up conversations even about just starting from sneakers, but then it evolves into so much more, and it's really cool to be able to share that space with the kids, and then it also opens up doors for families to be able to have um, to be able to be able to engage in conversations with them. So it's really cool to be able to say, hey, look, here I am, and I could say that I've said to kids in the past, like, look, you don't have to be a, you don't have to be a rapper or an athlete, right? And I'm not hating on either one, right? But you
Right.
don't like you have way more options, right? But regardless of what you choose, you still have to put work in, right? You still
Yes.
have to. It's work. It's not like nothing. Nothing's given to you. You have to really like buckle in and put the work in. So those are the conversations that I've had with some of the
Wow.
high school students I used to work with too. So just keeping it very like
Keep it
tangible,
real.
but just something that's
Hmm.
yeah, like definitely keeping it. Well, as the kids say, keeping it a buck. I think that's what the kids say. Someone out there could let me know, but try.
Oh, they will. And speaking of conversations, I always ask my guests to recommend a book, and yours happened to be called "Crucial Conversation: Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High." So tell me, why was this a book of choice for you this evening?
Yeah, actually, I was torn because I had two books of choices for this evening, but I'll go with Crucial Conversations, and I feel like it's in when working with people, right? Yeah, sometimes they're going to be difficult conversations you have to have, and I feel as this was one of the books that was suggested to me a few years ago when I was going through PRN from actually my mentor principal Josh Falk, and he recommended this book, Crucial Conversations, and it's been really helpful because again, especially being in the business of you're with people, right, and there's emotions that are tied there with with people, right, big people, little people, and so being able to navigate through difficult conversations are really important, and actually like walking away from the conversation and feeling like you've reached a resolution, it matters. So this was a book that I felt that was really I thought that it was a great choice in terms of people if they had questions about um, if they were considering a leadership journey, right? You have to be. There's a lot of conversations sometimes that need to happen with different people, various stakeholders, and you have to be able to, find a way to find. Hopefully, if you do your best to be able to make come to an equitable solution. The other book I had was "At Finding Your Leadership Soul" from Carlos Moreno. Carlos Moreno began his he works with I believe Big Picture Learning. And he originally had began his journey after Met High School as an advisor, and I felt his book was really powerful because one of the things that he discusses in his book is love, right, and the impact of
Mm.
as a leader, right, like what does that look like, right, and being vulnerable, right, what do those things look like, as a leader, and I feel like being in a position, leading where you're serving, you have to be vulnerable, and it's hard to be it's humbling to be vulnerable and put yourself out there. But I feel like in the role that I'm fortunate enough to serve in, I have to one be able to have difficult conversations, which also requires this level of vulnerability, this level of humility, and
Yeah.
I think those are two things you have to have with you when
So what
when
was
you're in
the
these
title
roles.
of that what was the title of that second book again?
Finding your leadership soul. It's I would tell you, man, it's definitely it talks it's Carlos Moreno discusses his journey, like his leadership journey, and just the impact that there were students that he had worked with that they had on him and his in his path. And it's I found that Carlos is another example of someone I would consider, someone that I would also consider a mentor as well. There's someone I could reach out to, ask questions. This is really helpful. So like that's another piece
Okay.
there. You're constantly looking for people who are, hey, who can I ask questions to? Who's going to help me? How can I better understand this piece? So he's another person who is he's a giant, figuratively and literally. He's a giant in education. So
Mm.
shout out to Los, man. Shout out to him.
Well, that is so wonderful. And folks, for those of you who want to keep this conversation going and you want to follow the career of Jeffrey Wright as he continues to make a difference in the educational space, this is his email. You see his email here on the contact under the contact info, and you can also connect with him on LinkedIn. Now, one little hint: if you're connecting with someone on LinkedIn, send them an invitation. Tell them how you know them or how you came about coming across their name. Do not
Yes,
just hit
yes.
that button that says connect. let them know. Take the extra 2 minutes to write that brief note and just say, "Hey, I saw you in a conversation with Dr. B, and I would just love to be able to connect with you." But say something, or "Hey, I saw you, crying about the Denver Nuggets, and I'd like to connect with you and commiserate with you because I'm a
Um,
Nuggets fan also." But please, folks, make sure you do that. I get a lot of requests for connections, and I'm like, "Oh, who is this person? I don't know who they are." Sometimes I connect, sometimes I don't. So, again, here's a great way to get in touch with Mr. Wright and find out more about his journey to leadership in education. And who knows, you might have a new mentor. So,
yeah, don't definitely no, definitely please reach out. Like I said, like you never know unless you reach out. So happy to be of support in some way. Even if it's just like, hey, can I pick your brain for a few minutes about about this, or if it's you want to chat, why Denver Nuggets. I can I can tell you about that. It's a 30-year relationship, so I'm fully committed. 30 years, so 30 years and counting. So um,
oh, Jeffrey, this has been, like I said, for me as your former teacher, this is like full circle. This is what, because they don't pay us a lot. So this is what, this is a return on my investment. Still having the opportunity to talk to students that I had when they were trying to figure out who they wanted to be, and to be able to see you and have this conversation with you and know that you're out there really, really making a difference in the lives of young people. Um, I mean, doesn't get any better than that. So I thank you so much for taking time out of your busy, crazy schedule and away from your two little ones to have this conversation this evening.
no, no, no. The pleasure's all mine, man. You are. I can't even tell you how much it means to me to be in this space. I know the impact that you've had on my life, the impact you've had on many townies, including Ralph, including my brother. So like
Yes.
you are. I just can't say enough. It means so much to me to have the opportunity to be here with you, and my babies are okay. I don't hear a lot of running around, so that's a good sign. They might be slowing down.
That's a good sign. That's a good sign. So, everyone, thank you so much for joining in this evening. For those of you that are watching this on the replay, you still can ask your questions. So, you just go to the chat and put your comment in there because I'm constantly monitoring this. Um, I am, again, just thrilled and overwhelmed and humbled to be able to bring to you folks who are in career spaces so that you can learn more about different careers. For me, it's all about career awareness, career development, and career exploration. And by bringing folks to you who are giants in their careers or working their ways towards that, um, it really is a lot to be able to bring folks to you to have these conversations. So, folks, stay tuned for the next C3 with Dr. B. You'll see it on my Facebook event page when I schedule the next one. And thank you so much for joining us. And again, don't be shy. I see a comment that just came in and I want to put it in here. Okay, so this is actually from a family member. It's a great conversation all around. Thank you, Dr. B, for inviting your former student, Mr. Wright. Thank you. So, Jan, thank you so much for
Thank
that
you.
comment. I really appreciate it. Jan is my cousin, so it's
Hey,
little
I'm
family
saying Miss
stuff
Jan,
going in there.
Miss Jan,
Yes,
appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay, folks, we will see you in either next. Well, no, we'll see you next week because it's actually Memorial Day weekend. But stay tuned for June. Jeffrey, hang on as we say goodbye.